Hello, everybody, and welcome to a Bittensor brief. Today, we're going to be discussing and exploring whether Bittensor TAO could break into the top 10 of all cryptocurrencies. So let's dive in, shall we? So right now, Bittensor is at about 3.5 billion in market cap, and it's at number 45 on the top 100 charts. So it's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll. But that also means that there's room for a lot of growth. So it's kind of good news, bad news. I remember when Bitcoin was sort of floating around, $400, $250 to $400. It was sort of bobbling around there between those two prices, which would have put its market cap at around 3.5 billion as well back in like 2013 or so. And it took a little while to sort of, gun up the charts. Today it's, $2.5 trillion. So, quite a leap up from where it was, right? So could Bittensor do something like that? My personal feeling is a very strong yes. I think it could happen. Could it get in the top 10? Well, Dogecoin is number 10 right now, and its market cap is 33 billion. So it basically would have to 10x from where it's at right now to sort of enter the bottom of the top 10. So the question is what would cause that kind of buying pressure? Well, so here's the interesting thing is that there's a number of factors which might cause that buying to happen. So the first one is there's a lot of institutional interest in TAO right now. The perception is that, a lot of the institutional investors missed most of the big run up of Ethereum and Bitcoin. And everybody's like, okay, so what's the next one that's got that kind of potential? And, given the AI narrative and given, the solidity of the projects, the subnets inside the Bittensor ecosystem, the feeling is that amongst a lot of the sort of intelligentsia is that TAO could be the next great coin to sort of rocket up the charts. My personal opinion is that it's got all the hallmarks of a great coin. And by that, I mean like a Bitcoin or an Ethereum. I don't even consider Solana to be sort of in the great coin category. I do think Bittensor is in the great coin category. It's just sort of early days. So institutional money, there's something like 7 or 8 institutional funds that I'm aware of, that I've heard of through the grapevine, that are right now raising very large war chests. I'm going to call it in aggregate, it's about $1 billion, maybe $1.5 billion worth of interest in coming into the Bittensor ecosystem over the next 6 months or so. If that happens, there's just not enough TAO on the exchanges for $1.5 billion worth of buying to purchase. So that will move the price pretty significantly if it all kind of comes in the way it sounds like it might. So that right there would sort of push. I think that would at least 5x it. So that gets us, halfway there of the 10x it would need to get into the top 10. The second sort of interesting dynamic is something James Altucher recently brought up. And that is, in order to register a subnet, it costs TAO. So you have to TAO in order to register a subnet, which, if there's a large demand for creating new subnets, like there was after subnets first launched, we went from 0 subnets up to 128 very quickly. And then the powers that be at Bittensor closed the door because they wanted to protect the quality of those 128 subnets and give them some time to sort of grow into their newfound status as one of the Bittensor subnets. But if they open the front door again and allow anyone to register subnets, the feeling is that there's such demand to create new subnets, they could quickly go up to 1,000 subnets. Now, if it does that, that's an awful lot of TAO demand creation. Just to do that alone is an enormous amount of TAO. So that right there could drive the price up 10x, right? So you have institutional money coming in. You have the demand for TAO to create new subnets, theoretically about to happen. And then you also have the subnets themselves are, they each have their own coin. They each have their own alpha token. In order to get that alpha token, you have to stake TAO. So that also creates more demand for TAO. And you compound that with the fact that Bittensor subnets are now available on Solana and on Base through two different mechanisms. Once the world at large on Base and on Solana discovers that they can buy early stage subnet tokens, that could actually explode very quickly, kind of overnight. And in order for those liquidity pools on Base and Solana to fill up, that creates demand for TAO to get the subnet tokens to bridge over to be available on Base or Solana. So that also creates buying pressure on Tau. So you have three dynamics which are intersecting pretty nicely and at largely the same time to create all this new demand for Tau. Now, there's a fourth one as well, and that is that the first halving of Bittensor, the Tau token, just like Bitcoin has halvings, Tau also has halvings, and the first one is coming up in December. So the blockchain will stop emitting half of the Tau that it does right now. So there will be even less Tau available on the market for all this buying pressure, right? So if you take those four things and consider them together as a whole, that feels like an awful lot of demand for Tau coming in the next 6 months. Just my personal opinion. So it's not financial advice, but it is my opinion, and I am positioning myself accordingly. The other thing I can tell you is, I've admitted that myself and some friends are putting together a Bittensor hedge fund right now. And that means that we have to talk to a lot of vendors who supply us with services, things like custody of the Tau, things like accounting, things like, so as we take the Tau and we buy subnets and we move in and out of subnets, there are firms that produce products which automate all that for us and keep track of how much capital gains people made, et cetera, what the taxes look like. And in order for those vendors to put the time and effort into creating those services for something like Bittensor, they have to first be convinced that this is a new market where there's a lot of people like me doing hedge funds and other financial instruments that are going to buy their services, right? So first of all, so they have become convinced of that, and they have added Bittensor and Tau to their array of products for people like me and my friends. And those products and services are only just now coming online, so that they just haven't been available at all because it takes a little bit of time to make them, right? First of all, you have to become convinced that you should make them, and then you have to put the engineering time into making them and then roll them out, right? And we're just in the period now where those services are rolling out. So that means that anyone who wants to create one of these Tau treasury companies, that wants to create a hedge fund, that wants to create an incubator like kind of what Barry Sobert is doing, having those services available, that's just all coming online right now. So it feels like there's this golden braid of 5 or 6 things that are sort of coming together over the next 6 months, maybe a year at the latest. And, the future looks pretty bright. And obviously the regulatory environment in the United States is also very friendly towards crypto in general, but of course towards AI. We have David Sachs in there working with President Trump, and we have things like the stablecoin bill sort of driving more fiat into the crypto universe. It just feels like the perfect storm of a lot of threads kind of coming together at the same time. So that's been this Bittensor brief. My name is Mark Jeffrey. Hashrate is the pod. Hit the subscribe button if you like it. We'll see you all next time.